The gunshot that shattered the prairie silence brought Katherine Danvers running from her cabin with her heart hammering against her ribs. But nothing could have prepared her for what she found on her doorstep that freezing November evening in 1878. A man slumped against the wooden post, blood spreading across his shirt, but it wasn't him that made her breath catch. It was the bundle in his arms, a tiny baby wrapped in what looked like a torn piece of flannel, wailing with the desperation of the starving. The cowboy's eyes met hers, brown and pleading, barely conscious. "Can you nurse him once?" he gasped, his voice cracking. "Just once. His mama, she's gone, been riding 3 days. He hasn't eaten." Katherine's hands were already reaching for the infant before her mind caught up with her actions. The baby couldn't have been more than a few weeks old, his face red and scrunched with hunger and cold. She pressed him against her chest instinctively, feeling the warmth of him through her dress. "Come inside," she commanded, her voice steadier than she felt. "You're bleeding." "The baby," the cowboy insisted, trying to push himself upright and failing. "Please, both of you, inside now." Katherine shifted the screaming infant to one arm and reached down with surprising strength to help the stranger to his feet. He was tall, even hunched over as he was, with dark hair that fell into his eyes and a face that might have been handsome if it weren't twisted with pain. She got him through the door and into the chair by the fire, the baby still crying in her arms. The cabin was small but warm, the fireplace crackling with fresh wood she'd added just before the gunshot rang out. The cowboy collapsed into the chair, his breathing labored. "Who shot you?" Katherine asked, already moving to lay the baby on her bed while she gathered supplies. "Doesn't matter," he said through gritted teeth. "They're gone now. The baby, please, miss. He needs to eat." Katherine looked at the infant, at his tiny fists flailing, at the desperate hunger in his cries. She'd given birth 4 months ago to a daughter who lived only 3 days, her lungs too weak to draw breath in this harsh Nevada territory. Her milk had only just dried up 2 weeks past, but sometimes she knew it could come back. "I lost my baby," she said quietly, picking up the child again. "4 months ago. I don't know if I can help him the way you're asking." The cowboy's eyes, despite the pain clouding them, filled with understanding and something deeper, a shared grief that needed no explanation. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry, but if there's any chance." Katherine unbuttoned her dress with shaking fingers, positioning the baby against her breast. He latched on immediately, sucking frantically, and to her absolute shock, she felt the familiar tingle of let down. The baby's cries ceased almost instantly, replaced by the soft sounds of feeding. Tears sprang to her eyes unbidden. She'd thought she'd never feel this again, never know this particular purpose. The cowboy was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read, gratitude mixed with something else, something vulnerable. "What's his name?" she asked softly. "Thomas," the cowboy said, "after his granddaddy. His mama called him Tommy, and you, Kade Kensington." He tried to sit up straighter and winced. "I'm obliged to you, miss. More than I can say." "Katherine Danvers," she replied, "and you can thank me by letting me look at that wound." "Where are you hit?" "Shoulder," Kade said. "Went clean through, I think." Katherine waited until Tommy had his fill, his sucking becoming slower and more content. She couldn't believe her body was responding, producing what this baby needed. Perhaps grief and biology weren't so far apart after all. She laid the drowsy infant back on the bed, surrounded by pillows so he couldn't roll, and turned her attention to Kade. "Take off your shirt," she instructed, already heating water over the fire. Kade struggled with the buttons, his left arm clearly not cooperating. Katherine moved to help him, her fingers brushing against his as she worked the fabric free. His skin was warm, feverish perhaps, and she could see the damage clearly now. The bullet had indeed gone through the meat of his shoulder, missing bone but tearing muscle. "You need a doctor," she said. "No doctors in Cherry Creek," Kade replied. "Not anymore. Doc Henderson died last month." Katherine knew that. Everyone in the small Nevada mining town knew that. It was one of many reasons she'd been considering leaving, heading back east to her sister in Philadelphia. But then winter had come early and the passes were already showing snow. "Then you're stuck with me," she said, pressing a clean cloth to the wound. Kade hissed in pain but didn't pull away. "This is going to hurt." "Can't hurt worse than watching Sarah die," he said quietly. And Katherine understood he was talking about the baby's mother. She worked in silence for a while, cleaning the wound with whiskey that made Kade's jaw clench, but brought no sound from his lips. He was tough, this cowboy, but she could see the exhaustion in every line of his body. "Tell me what happened," Katherine said as she threaded a needle. "If you can." Kade's eyes drifted to the baby sleeping peacefully on the bed. "Sarah was my brother's wife. Connor, he worked a ranch about 60 miles south of here near the California border. Good man, good husband, but he got thrown from a horse 3 weeks back, broke his neck." Katherine's hand stilled for just a moment before continuing. "I'm sorry. Sarah, she was already struggling. The baby came early, she had a hard time of it. Without Connor, without his wages, she couldn't make it. I came as soon as I heard, but I was working a cattle drive up in Idaho by the time I got there." His voice cracked. "She was burning with fever. Childbed fever, I think. She lasted 2 more days. And the baby, she was trying to feed him, but she was too sick. He was starving. I didn't know what to do." Kade's eyes met hers, and Katherine saw the depth of his fear. "I've never held a baby before last week. I'm a ranch hand, Miss Danvers. I know horses and cattle and how to mend fence. I don't know nothing about keeping a baby alive." "You got him here," Katherine said gently. "That took courage." "That took desperation," Kade corrected. "I remembered Cherry Creek, remembered it had families, thought maybe someone could help. And then those men jumped me on the road." "Who were they?" "Outlaws, I think. Wanted my horse and whatever money I had." Kade's laugh was bitter. "I had $3 and a dying baby. They shot me anyway." Katherine began stitching the wound with careful, practiced movements. Her father had been a doctor back in Boston, and she'd learned at his side before marrying and moving west. Before her husband had died of cholera 2 years ago, before her baby had been born too soon and too weak. "You got them before they got you?" she asked. "Had to," Kade said simply. "For Tommy." The baby made a small sound in his sleep, and both adults turned to look at him. He was beautiful, Katherine thought, with wispy dark hair and a cupid's bow mouth. Perfect and fragile and wholly dependent. "What will you do with him?" she asked quietly, tying off the last stitch. "I don't know," Kade admitted. "I can't take care of him. I work ranches, sleep in bunkhouses, follow the work. That's no life for a baby." "There's an orphanage in Carson City," Katherine said, though the words felt wrong even as she spoke them. "No." Kade's response was immediate and fierce. "Sarah's last words, she made me promise. She said don't let him grow up alone. Don't let him think he wasn't loved. How can I keep that promise if I give him to strangers?" Katherine bandaged his shoulder carefully, her mind working through possibilities. "Then what?" "I was hoping," Kade said slowly, "that maybe in Cherry Creek there might be a family, someone who could take him, raise him right. I have some money saved. I could send it, help support him. You'd give him up but stay involved. Is that wrong?" Kade looked at her with such raw honesty that Katherine's heart squeezed. "He's my blood, Miss Danvers, my brother's son, but I'm no kind of father." "You got him here alive," Katherine repeated. "Against all odds, that's more than many real fathers would do." She finished with his shoulder and moved to wash her hands, aware of Kade's eyes following her. The cabin felt smaller suddenly, more intimate with the darkness outside and the firelight casting shadows. "You live here alone?" Kade asked. "For 2 years now," Katherine confirmed. "My husband died. I stayed because I didn't know where else to go. Then I was pregnant and traveling seemed impossible. After I lost the baby, I just—" She trailed off, not sure how to explain the inertia that had kept her in this rough mining town. "I'm sorry for your loss," Kade said, and the understanding in his voice was almost too much to bear. Tommy began to fuss again, and Katherine went to him automatically, picking him up and rocking him gently. He was warm and solid in her arms, smelling of milk and something indefinably sweet. Her body recognized what her mind was still processing. This was what she'd been missing, this purpose, this need. "He'll be hungry again soon," she said. "Babies eat every few hours." "I know," Kade said tiredly. "I've barely slept in 3 days trying to keep him quiet, keep him warm." "You need rest," Katherine decided. "You can take the bed. I'll keep the baby by the fire." "I can't take your bed, madam. You're injured and exhausted, and I won't have you dying in my chair out of some misplaced sense of propriety," Katherine said firmly. "Besides, I'll need to be up with Tommy anyway." Kade looked like he wanted to argue but was simply too tired. He let Katherine help him to his feet and guide him to the bed, where he collapsed with a groan that spoke of deep exhaustion. He was asleep within moments, his breathing evening out into the rhythm of the truly spent. Katherine settled into the chair by the fire with Tommy in her arms, a blanket wrapped around them both. The baby's eyes were open now, dark blue and unfocused, looking at her with that serious expression newborns sometimes had. She touched his soft cheek, his tiny hand, marveling at him. "What are we going to do with you?" she whispered. The night passed slowly, marked by Tommy's feeding schedule. Katherine's body responded each time, producing enough milk to satisfy him, a small miracle she didn't question. Kade slept the sleep of the dead, not stirring even when Tommy cried. Katherine watched the cowboy in the firelight, noting the lines of pain even in sleep, the way his hand stayed curled near his injured shoulder. He was handsome, she admitted to herself in the quiet darkness. Strong-featured, with a straight nose and a jaw that suggested stubbornness. Younger than her, perhaps, though it was hard to tell. She was 26, feeling ancient some days. He might be 23, 24. Young enough to start over, to build a different life. But what life could include a baby that wasn't his, work that kept him moving, no stable home? The same questions applied to her, Katherine realized. What life was this? Living alone in a dying mining town, keeping house for ghosts, when dawn broke over the Nevada hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Katherine was still in the chair, Tommy asleep against her shoulder. Kade stirred, groaning as consciousness brought pain. "Morning," Katherine said softly. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been shot," Kade said, managing a weak smile. His eyes went immediately to the baby. "He made it through the night, he did. Fed 4 times, slept in between. He's a good baby." Kade sat up slowly, testing his shoulder. "Thanks to you, Miss Danvers, I can't ever repay what you've done." "Then don't try," Katherine said. "Just tell me the truth. What happens now?" Kade ran his good hand through his hair, looking lost. "I need to find him a home. A real home, with a mother and father who can give him what he needs." "There's no such family in Cherry Creek," Katherine said bluntly. "The Johnsons have 6 children already, and Mr. Johnson drinks his wages. The Pratts lost their farm and are leaving for Oregon. The Wews run the laundry and work 16-hour days. There's no one here who can take him." "Then I'll try Carson City or Virginia City, and how will you get there?" "You can barely sit up, Kade. You need at least a week to heal before you should be riding anywhere." "He can't wait a week," Kade said desperately. "He needs more than I can give him right now." He needs to eat and be kept warm and be loved, Katherine said. I can do that. For a week while you heal, then we'll figure out what comes next. Kade stared at her. You do that. Feed him, even though he's nothing to you. Katherine looked down at Tommy's sleeping face. He's not nothing. He's a baby who needs help. And I'm a woman with milk and empty arms. Sometimes things happen for a reason. You believe that? Kade asked quietly. I don't know what I believe anymore, Katherine admitted. But I believe in doing what's right in front of me. And right now, that's taking care of this baby and making sure you don't die of infection or fever. Kade was quiet for a long moment. Okay, he finally said. A week, but I pay my way. I can chop wood, fix whatever needs fixing. I'm not helpless. You're injured, Katherine pointed out. I can work one-handed if I have to. There was pride in his voice, and Katherine understood it. She nodded. Fine, but you take it easy and you let me check that wound twice a day. Deal. They settled into an unlikely routine over the next few days. Kade proved true to his word, splitting wood one-handed, fixing the loose board on the porch, mending the fence that kept Katherine's 3 chickens contained. He moved slowly, carefully, but he moved, earning his keep. Katherine cared for Tommy, amazed each time her body provided what he needed. It felt like a gift, like some cosmic apology for what had been taken from her. She fed him and changed him and sang to him in the quiet hours, old songs her mother had sung to her. And in the evenings, after Tommy was settled and the chores were done, Katherine and Kade would sit by the fire and talk. She learned that he'd grown up on a ranch in Wyoming, that he'd left at 16 after his father died, that he'd been drifting ever since. He learned that she'd been a doctor's daughter who'd married for love and moved west full of dreams, only to find the reality much harsher than the fantasy. You regret it? Kade asked one night. Coming out here, Katherine considered the question carefully. I regret that my husband died. I regret that my baby didn't live, but I don't regret trying. We had 2 good years before the cholera. That counts for something. Sarah and Connor had 3, Kade said, looking into the fire. 3 good years. She said they were the happiest of her life. Tell me about them, Katherine urged gently. So Kade talked, painting a picture of his older brother, steady and kind, who'd saved his wages to buy a small ranch. Of Sarah, barely 20, who'd fallen in love with Connor's quiet strength and made him happier than Kade had ever seen him. Of their excitement when they learned a baby was coming, their plans for the future. Connor was going to teach him to ride, Kade said, his voice rough with grief. He talked about it all the time. My son, he'd say, like he couldn't quite believe it. And then a damn horse threw him, and it was all over in a second. And Sarah couldn't recover from losing him, Katherine said softly. She tried. God, she tried. But the baby coming early and the fever and losing Connor, it was too much. Kade's eyes were bright with unshed tears. She held Tommy once, just once when he was born. She smiled at him and said he had Connor's eyes. Then the fever took her mind, and she never really came back. Katherine reached out without thinking, covering Kade's hand with hers. He turned his palm up, threading their fingers together, and they sat like that in the firelight. 2 people who understood loss in a way others didn't. You're good with him, Kade said after a while, nodding toward Tommy sleeping in a makeshift cradle Kade had fashioned from an old crate and some blankets. Natural. It feels right, Katherine admitted. I didn't think anything would feel right again, but this does. What if, Kade started, then stopped, seeming to rethink his words. What if what? He looked at her directly, his brown eyes serious. What if you kept him, not just for a week, but for always, raised him as your own? Katherine's heart skipped a beat. Kade, I can't just take your nephew. Why not? You're feeding him, caring for him. You have room in your heart for him, I can see it. And he needs a mother, Katherine. someone who'll love him like he deserves. It was the first time he'd used her first name, and the intimacy of it made her breath catch. "What about you?" "I could send money," Kade said. "Visit when I can. You'd be doing me the greatest favor anyone could, keeping him safe and loved." "That's not what I meant," Katherine said quietly. "What about you? Would you just ride away and leave him?" Kade's hand tightened on hers. "What choice do I have? I told you I live in bunkhouses, work ranches. I can't give him stability." "Then stop," Katherine said, the words surprising her even as she spoke them. "Stop drifting. Stay somewhere, build something." "Where?" Kade asked, and there was such longing in his voice. "How?" "Here," Katherine said, her heart hammering. "Cherry Creek needs workers. The Jacobson Ranch is always hiring. It's not glamorous, but it's steady. And you'd be near Tommy. You're serious." "Why not? You'd have a job, a place to be. Tommy would have his uncle. And I'd have help. Someone who could fix things and chop wood and know where this baby came from." "You'd want me around?" Kade asked, searching her face. Katherine realized she did, more than was entirely proper or wise. In less than a week, this wounded cowboy had become part of the fabric of her days. She liked talking to him, liked his quiet competence, liked the way he looked at Tommy with such fierce protectiveness. "Yes," she said simply. "I would." Kade was quiet for a long moment. "What would people think?" "A single woman with a baby and a cowboy hanging around. People will talk regardless," Katherine said. "They already wonder why I stay here alone, but I don't live my life for gossip." "I'd want to help raise him," Kade said carefully, "not just send money. I'd want to teach him things, be part of his life." "I'd want that too," Katherine said, and realized it was true. Tommy deserved to know his family, his history. He should know he's loved, by both of us. "Then I'll stay," Kade decided. "I'll talk to Jacobson tomorrow about work. And Katherine, I swear to you, I'll do right by you and Tommy both." The next week unfolded like a promise taking shape. Kade rode out to the Jacobson Ranch, 5 miles from town, and came back with a job offer. The pay was fair, the work hard, and there was a small cabin on the property he could use. He'd start after his shoulder fully healed, which the ranch foreman judged to be another week or so. In the meantime, Kade stayed in Katherine's spare room, the one she'd prepared as a nursery before losing her daughter. It felt right to have life in that space again, even if it wasn't quite the life she'd imagined. Tommy thrived, growing plumper and more alert by the day. Katherine's milk came in fully, her body adjusting to his needs as if they'd always been together. She'd never felt more useful, more needed. The grief that had been her constant companion began to ease, not disappearing but settling into something more bearable. And Kade, healing and helpful, became part of the rhythm of her household. He'd make coffee in the morning while she fed Tommy. She'd cook supper while he bathed the baby, his large hands surprisingly gentle on that small body. They'd sit together in the evenings, planning for the future, talking about everything and nothing. Katherine found herself noticing things she probably shouldn't. The way Kade's hair curled at his collar, the deepness of his laugh when Tommy grabbed his finger with surprising strength, the muscles of his back visible through his shirt when he worked outside. She was 26, a widow, and she'd thought that part of her life was over. But apparently her heart had other ideas. She caught Kade watching her sometimes too, his eyes following her movements around the cabin with an intensity that made her skin warm. Neither of them acted on it, both aware of the delicate balance they'd created, but the awareness crackled between them like electricity before a storm. 2 weeks after Kade had arrived on her doorstep, bleeding and desperate, he was scheduled to start work at the Jacobson Ranch. The night before, Katherine made a special supper, roasting a chicken she'd been saving for a special occasion. "You didn't have to do this," Kade said, but he was smiling as he sat down at her small table. "You're starting a new job tomorrow." "That's worth celebrating," Katherine replied, settling Tommy in his cradle nearby where they could both see him. They ate in comfortable silence for a while before Kade cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about logistics. The cabin at Jacobson's. It's small but serviceable. I could be here most evenings after work, help with Tommy, do chores, if you wanted." "I'd like that," Katherine said. "He should see you every day if possible. And you," Kade asked quietly, "would you like to see me every day?" Katherine met his eyes across the table. "Yes, Kade, I would." "Katherine," he said, and there was something in his voice that made her pulse quicken. "These past 2 weeks, they've been the best I've had in a long time. Maybe ever. And I know it's been fast and the circumstances are strange, but I can't help feeling like this is where I'm supposed to be. With you and Tommy." "I feel it too," Katherine admitted. "Like maybe everything that happened, all the loss and pain, was leading to this. To you showing up with a baby who needed me, who I needed just as much." Kade stood and came around the table, offering her his hand. Katherine took it and let him pull her to her feet. They were standing close now, close enough that she could feel his warmth, see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "I'm falling in love with you," Kade said bluntly. "I know it's too soon. I know we're still figuring things out, but it's the truth. You're strong and kind and beautiful, and you saved Tommy's life. You're saving mine too, in a way." Katherine's breath caught. "Kade, I'm older than you. I'm damaged goods, a widow with a past. You could find someone younger, someone without so much grief." "I don't want someone younger," Kade said fiercely. "I want you. Your strength, your kindness, your grief and survival, and everything that makes you who you are. Age doesn't matter to me, Katherine. What matters is that when I think about the future now, you're in it. Always." "I'm falling in love with you too," Katherine whispered. "I tried not to. It seemed too fast, too convenient, but I can't help it. You're good and brave, and you love that baby like he's your own. How could I not love you?" Kade cupped her face with his good hand, his touch gentle. "Can I kiss you?" In answer, Katherine rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, two people learning each other. Then Cade's arm came around her waist, pulling her closer, and Katherine's hands found his hair, and the kiss deepened into something that spoke of hunger and hope and the beginning of healing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kade rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "I know it's crazy, I know it's fast, but marry me, Katherine. Let me be Tommy's father and your husband. Let me build a life with you." Katherine's heart was racing, but her mind was surprisingly clear. This was right. Against all odds, against all logic, this was exactly right. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Kade kissed her again, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around, laughing with pure joy. Tommy made a sound from his cradle, and they both turned to him, still holding each other. "You hear that, Tommy?" Kade said, going to pick up the baby. "We're going to be a family. A real family." Katherine came to stand beside them, wrapping her arm around Cade's waist as they both looked down at the baby who'd brought them together. Tommy's eyes were open, that serious newborn gaze fixed on them, and Katherine could have sworn he smiled. "A real family," she repeated, and for the first time in years, she felt completely at peace. They were married 3 weeks later by the circuit judge who passed through Cherry Creek once a month. Katherine wore a simple blue dress, and Kade borrowed a suit from the ranch foreman. Tommy, now 6 weeks old and thriving, was held by Mrs. Jacobson during the ceremony, and gave a timely squeal right as they were pronounced husband and wife, making everyone laugh. The Jacobsons, a kind older couple whose own children were grown and gone, had taken to Kade immediately. When they heard about the wedding, Mrs. Jacobson insisted on hosting a small reception at their ranch house. It was modest by any standard, but to Katherine, who'd been alone so long, it felt like the whole world was celebrating with them. "You make a handsome couple," Mrs. Jacobson said, handing Tommy to Katherine. "And this little one is blessed to have found you both." "We're the blessed ones," Katherine said, meaning it with her whole heart. That night in Katherine's cabin, which was now truly their home, Kade and Katherine stood together in the bedroom. There was nervousness mixed with anticipation, but also a deep comfort. They knew each other now, had seen each other at their worst and most vulnerable. "Are you sure about this?" Kade asked, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "About me, about all of it." Katherine reached up to touch his face, this man who'd become everything to her so quickly. "I've never been more sure of anything." Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a claiming and a healing both. Kade was gentle with her, mindful of her past grief, and Katherine showed him that love didn't have to be complicated to be real. They came together with honesty and desire, and afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, both felt truly home for the first time in years. Life settled into a new pattern. Kade worked at the Jacobson ranch during the day, returning home each evening to Katherine and Tommy. Katherine kept house, cared for the baby, and started taking in sewing work from other families in Cherry Creek to bring in extra money. It wasn't much, but it was theirs, built together with purpose and love. Tommy grew, reaching all his milestones right on schedule. He rolled over at 3 months, sitting up at 6. His first word at 8 months was "Ma," looking right at Katherine, and she cried happy tears. His second word a week later was "Da," reaching for Kade, and the cowboy's face lit up like sunrise. "He knows," Kade said wonderingly. "He knows we're his." "We are his," Katherine confirmed, "just like he's ours." When Tommy was 9 months old, Katherine realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She'd lost one baby already. Could she bear to lose another? Kade held her when she told him, his embrace strong and sure. "We'll get through this together," he promised. "Whatever happens, we face it together." "I'm scared," Katherine admitted. "So am I," Kade said honestly. "But I believe in you, in us. This baby is going to be fine, I feel it." Katherine wanted to believe him, and as the months passed and she stayed healthy and strong, she began to. This pregnancy was different from her first. She was eating better, less stressed, surrounded by love and support. Dr. Sanders, the new physician who'd moved to Cherry Creek in the spring, examined her regularly and pronounced everything perfect. "You're healthy as a horse, Mrs. Kensington," he said approvingly. "This baby is going to arrive right on schedule and bawling to wake the dead. You mark my words." He was right. In late September of 1879, almost exactly a year after Kade had appeared on Katherine's doorstep, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The labor was long and hard, but Katherine was strong and Kade was there, holding her hand, whispering encouragement. When the baby finally arrived, his cry was indeed loud enough to wake the dead, and Katherine laughed through her tears as Dr. Sanders placed him on her chest. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We've been waiting for you." "He's perfect," Kade said, his voice choked with emotion. "Katherine, he's absolutely perfect." They named him Connor after Kade's brother, with the middle name James after Katherine's father. Connor James Kensington entered the world loved and wanted, surrounded by family. Tommy, now a year old and walking, was fascinated by his baby brother. He'd toddle over to the cradle constantly, wanting to see, to touch, to help. Kade or Katherine was always there to supervise, showing Tommy how to be gentle, letting him be involved. "Good boy, Tommy," Kade would say when Tommy carefully patted Connor's head. "You're such a good big brother." Katherine would watch these moments with a full heart, amazed at how life had transformed. 2 years ago, she'd been alone and drowning in grief. Now she had a husband she adored, 2 sons, and a future that looked bright. The seasons turned. Connor grew from infant to toddler, Tommy from toddler to little boy. Kade was promoted to foreman at the Jacobson Ranch, and with the better pay, they were able to add a room onto the cabin, giving the boys their own space. When Tommy was 4 and Connor was 2, Katherine became pregnant again. This time there was no fear, only joy and excitement. Their daughter arrived in the spring of 1883, and they named her Sarah after Tommy's birth mother. Kade had hesitated at first when Katherine suggested the name. "Are you sure? That's a lot of history to carry." "It's the right history," Katherine said firmly. "Sarah brought Tommy into this world and trusted you to keep him safe. She's part of our family story. Our daughter should carry her name with pride." So Sarah Rose Kensington joined the family, a beautiful baby girl with Katherine's green eyes and Kade's dark hair. Tommy and Connor were gentle with their baby sister, bringing her toys and singing to her the same songs Katherine had once sung to them. Life wasn't always easy. There were hard winters and dry summers, years when money was tight and the work was endless. But through it all, Katherine and Kade had each other, and that made everything bearable. On Tommy's 7th birthday, Katherine and Kade sat him down for an important conversation. He was old enough now, they decided, to know the truth about where he came from. "Tommy," Katherine began gently, "we need to tell you something about your family." Tommy looked between them with serious brown eyes, Connor's eyes, though he didn't know it yet. "Okay," Kade took a deep breath. "You know how much we love you, right? How you're our son in every way that matters." "Yes," Tommy said, sounding uncertain now. "That's never going to change," Katherine assured him. "But the truth is, you were born to different parents. A man named Connor, who was my brother, and a woman named Sarah." "Where are they?" Tommy asked, and Katherine's heart broke a little at the innocence in his voice. "They died when you were very small," Kade said, his voice thick with emotion. "But they loved you so much, Tommy. Your father talked about teaching you to ride before you were even born, and your mother held you once and said you had beautiful eyes. Why didn't they keep me?" Tommy's lower lip was trembling. "They wanted to," Katherine said, pulling him into her arms. "More than anything. But sometimes life doesn't go the way we plan. Your father was hurt in an accident and your mother got very sick. Before she died, she made your Uncle Kade promise to keep you safe and loved, and he brought you to me." "So Uncle Kade is really my uncle?" Tommy asked. "I am," Kade confirmed. "Your father was my big brother and I loved him very much, just like I love you." Tommy was quiet for a long moment, processing. "But you're still my pa. And Ma is still my ma, always," Kade said firmly. "We're your parents, Tommy. We've raised you, loved you, and that's never going to change. And Connor and Sarah are still my brother and sister." "Of course," Katherine said. "Nothing about our family changes except that now you know the whole story." Tommy thought about this, his young face serious. Then he looked up at them with those eyes that were his birth father's legacy. "My first papa and mama, they were good people, the best," Kade said. "Your father was kind and strong and honest. Your mother was gentle and brave. They would be so proud of the boy you're becoming." "I wish I could have known them," Tommy said quietly. "We'll tell you stories," Katherine promised. "Anytime you want, we'll tell you about them. They're part of you and we want you to know that." Tommy nodded slowly, then surprised them both by asking, "Can we go put flowers on their graves sometime?" Kade's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, son. We'll go this summer. I'll show you where they're buried and you can meet them in a way." They did make that journey in the summer when Tommy was 7. It was a long ride to the small cemetery near where Connor and Sarah's ranch had been, but Kade and Katherine felt it was important. They brought all 3 children, wanting them to understand their family history. Tommy stood at the graves of his birth parents, holding a bouquet of wildflowers, and Katherine watched as he carefully laid them on each stone. "I'm Tommy," he said quietly, as if introducing himself. "I'm your son. Pa and Ma told me about you. They said you loved me." Kade had to turn away, overcome, and Katherine went to him, wrapping her arms around her husband as he wept for his brother and the life that might have been. "He's a good boy," she whispered. "They would be so proud." "Because of you," Kade said. "Because you gave him everything he needed." "Because of us," Katherine corrected. "We did this together." They stood there together, a family forged from loss and love, and said goodbye to the past while embracing the future. The years continued to pass, marked by the milestones of their children's lives. Tommy grew tall and strong, with a love for horses that reminded Kade of Connor. Connor, their middle child, was quieter and thoughtful, fascinated by books and learning. Sarah was spirited and loving, keeping all of them on their toes. When Tommy turned 16, Kade taught him to work at the Jacobson Ranch alongside him. The old couple had long since passed, leaving the ranch to their nephew, but Kade had stayed on as foreman, and now Tommy worked as a hand. Father and son would ride out together in the mornings, and Katherine would watch them go with a full heart. "He's so much like Connor," Kade said one night, lying in bed beside Katherine. "The way he sits a horse, the way he talks to the animals, it's like having my brother back in a way." "He's like you too," Katherine pointed out. "Your patience, your work ethic, your kindness. That's all you," Kade said, kissing her forehead. "You made him the man he's becoming." "We both did," Katherine insisted, as she always did. Their partnership was the foundation everything else was built on. In 1891, when Katherine was 39 and Kade was 35, Tommy announced he was getting married. The girl was Elizabeth Porter, daughter of the family that ran the general store in Cherry Creek, and she was sweet and hardworking and clearly adored Tommy. "I'd like your blessing," Tommy said formally, sitting across from Kade and Katherine at their kitchen table. "Both of you. I know you're not my birth parents, but you're my real parents in every way that matters." "You have our blessing," Katherine said, her eyes brimming with tears. "And Tommy, we are your real parents. Biology doesn't change that." The wedding was held in the spring of 1892, and the whole town turned out. Tommy was 21 and Elizabeth 19, both of them glowing with happiness. As Katherine watched her eldest son pledge his life to his bride, she thought back to that cold November night when Kade had stumbled onto her porch with a starving baby. She'd had no idea that moment would lead to all of this, to a full life and a loving family and more joy than she'd ever thought possible. Kade seemed to be thinking the same thing because he leaned over and whispered, "Best decision I ever made, bringing him to you. Best decision I ever made, saying yes to all of it," Katherine whispered back. "To him, to you, to this life." Their other children grew too. Connor went off to San Francisco to study engineering, coming home for holidays and summers with stories of the city and the modern world. Sarah, their youngest, became a teacher in Cherry Creek, educating the children of the miners and ranchers with patience and creativity. As Katherine and Kade grew older, their love only deepened. They'd weathered storms together, literal and metaphorical. They'd buried friends and celebrated births, struggled through hard times and rejoiced in good ones. They'd built something real and lasting, rooted in the worst day of both their lives transforming into the best. Tommy and Elizabeth gave them 3 grandchildren, each one a blessing. Connor eventually married a woman from San Francisco and brought her home to meet the family, settling in Reno where he worked for the railroad. Sarah married a fellow teacher, and they moved to Carson City, but visited often. In 1898, on their 20th wedding anniversary, Kade surprised Katherine by taking her back to the cabin where they'd first met. It was abandoned now, the mining in Cherry Creek having mostly played out, but the structure still stood. "This is where it all began," Kade said, holding her hand as they stood on the porch, "where I asked a stranger to help save a baby's life. And where I found my purpose again," Katherine added, "where I found you." 20 years, Kade marveled. 3 children raised, a life built. "And I love you more now than I did the day we married." "I love you more too," Katherine said. "You gave me everything, Kade. A family, a home, a reason to keep going." "You gave me the same," Kade replied. "You saved Tommy and me both. We were lost, and you showed us the way home." They renewed their vows that day, standing in that old cabin with no one but each other as witnesses. 20 years before, they'd been 2 broken people trying to save a baby. Now they were whole, healed by love and time and the family they'd created. As they rode back to their home in Cherry Creek, where their children and grandchildren waited to celebrate with them, Katherine thought about how life unfolds in unexpected ways. She'd lost so much: her first husband, her first baby, the easy future she'd once imagined. But from that loss had come something richer and deeper than she'd ever dreamed possible. She looked over at Kade, still handsome at 42, his hair showing silver at the temples but his eyes as warm as ever. He caught her looking and smiled, that smile that still made her heart skip. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how grateful I am," Katherine said simply. "For that night you showed up on my doorstep, for Tommy, for you, for all of it." "Me too," Kade said. "Every single day, me too." The years continued to be kind to them. They grew old together, watching their children raise children of their own. Tommy took over as foreman of the ranch when Kade retired at 60, continuing the legacy of honest work and fair dealing. Connor became an important man in the railroad company, helping connect Nevada to the rest of the country. Sarah's students went on to do remarkable things, and she never stopped teaching until she was well into her 70s. On a warm summer evening in 1923, Katherine and Kade sat on the porch of the house they'd expanded over the years to accommodate their growing family during holidays. Katherine was 71, Kade 67, and they'd been married for 45 years. Tommy, now 45 himself, had come for supper with Elizabeth and their children and grandchildren. Connor and Sarah had come too, bringing their families. The house was full of noise and laughter and life. "Look at what we built," Katherine said softly, watching her grandchildren play in the yard while their parents talked and laughed together. "Look at what you built," Kade corrected gently. "You took a starving baby and gave him everything. You took a lost cowboy and made him a man worth being. This family exists because you said yes when you could have said no. We built it together," Katherine insisted, as she had for 45 years. "Every bit of it." Kade took her hand, his grip still strong despite his age. "Thank you for saying yes. To Tommy, to me, to the life we've lived. It's been better than anything I could have imagined." "Thank you for trusting me with him," Katherine replied. "For staying, for loving me, for building this with me." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the Nevada hills they'd called home for so long. Inside the house, their family gathered, the family that had started with a desperate plea and a curvy girl holding a baby by the fire. Tommy came out onto the porch, his own hair now gray, his face lined with years of honest work and honest living. "Pa, Ma, supper's ready." Kade and Katherine stood, leaning on each other as they always had, and followed their son inside. The table was crowded with generations of Kensingtons, all of them connected by the choice 2 people had made on a cold November night in 1878. As Katherine looked around the table at the faces she loved, at the legacy of love and family and perseverance, she felt complete. The grief of her early losses had never fully disappeared, but it had been transformed into something beautiful. Her first daughter, who lived only 3 days, had made it possible for her to feed Tommy. Her first husband, whose death had brought her to Cherry Creek, had put her in the exact place she needed to be when Kade arrived. Everything, all of it, had led to this moment, to this table full of love. Kade raised his glass, his voice still strong enough to command attention. "A toast," he said. "To family, to the choices that bring us together, and to the love that keeps us there." "To family," everyone echoed, glasses clinking. Katherine caught Kade's eye across the table and smiled. They'd done it. Against all odds, through all challenges, they'd built something that would last beyond them, a legacy of love that would continue through their children and grandchildren, and beyond. That night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet again, Katherine and Kade lay in their bed, talking as they always did before sleep. "You think they know?" Katherine asked. "How much they mean to us?" "I think so," Kade said. "We've shown them every day of their lives." "Tommy most of all," Katherine said. "He was the first blessing, the one that brought us together." "He was," Kade agreed. "And I think about Sarah sometimes, about how she trusted me with him, how she had faith that I'd find a way to keep my promise." "You did," Katherine said firmly. "You kept him safe and loved. She would be proud." "We kept him safe and loved," Kade corrected. "And Connor, too. He'd be proud of the man Tommy became." They fell silent, both thinking of the brother and sister-in-law who'd never gotten to see their son grow up. But their legacy lived on in Tommy, in his children, in the values of family and love that had been passed down through generations. "I'd do it all again," Katherine said suddenly. "Every hard moment, every struggle, every tear. I'd do it all again to end up here." "So would I," Kade said, pulling her close. "1,000 times over." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, two people who'd found their way to each other through tragedy and transformed it into triumph. Katherine Danvers Kensington lived to be 79 years old, passing peacefully in her sleep in 1931, with Kade holding her hand. She was surrounded by her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, all of them a testament to the choice she'd made on a cold November night to help a baby in need. Kade followed her 3 years later, at the age of 78, his last words a whispered, "I'm coming, Katherine. Wait for me." They were buried side by side in the Cherry Creek Cemetery, their headstones simple but meaningful, Katherine and Kade Kensington. Together they built a legacy of love. Tommy, Elizabeth, Connor, and Sarah ensured their parents' story was told and remembered. They spoke of the night Kade had arrived with a starving baby, of Katherine's immediate compassion, of how two broken people had found healing in each other and built something beautiful from the ashes of their grief. The Kensington family continued to grow and thrive, spreading across Nevada and beyond. But they always remembered their roots, the cowboy who pleaded for help and the curvy girl who held a baby by the fire and said yes to a future neither of them could have imagined. In the end, it wasn't just a story about survival or convenience or even circumstance. It was a story about choice, about love, about the way two people can come together in the darkest moment and create light that lasts for generations. It was a story about family, the ones we're born into and the ones we create, about how the hardest days can lead to the best lives if we're brave enough to say yes when opportunity knocks in the most unexpected ways. Tommy Kensington lived to be 93 years old, long enough to see the world change in ways his birth parents and adopted parents could never have imagined. But he never forgot where he came from, who he'd been, or the two people who'd chosen to love him unconditionally. He told the story often, especially to his own grandchildren and great-grandchildren. How a cowboy pleaded with a curvy girl to nurse a baby just once, and how that single act of compassion had changed all their lives forever. Love isn't always romance, he'd say. Sometimes love is saying yes when you could say no. Sometimes it's choosing to help when it's easier to turn away. My ma and pa taught me that. They lived it every day. And the Kensington family, descended from a baby who should have died but didn't, from a cowboy who could have given up but didn't, from a woman who could have turned away but didn't, carried that lesson forward into a future built on the foundation of one cold November night in 1878. The story of Katherine and Kade became family legend, told and retold, embellished and cherished. But at its core, it remained simple and true. Two people met in tragedy, found each other in grief, and built a love that lasted a lifetime and beyond. In Cherry Creek, Nevada, where the mining eventually gave out and the population dwindled, there remained one constant. The old Kensington house, maintained by descendants, standing as a monument to the family that had been born there. Visitors came sometimes, drawn by the story, wanting to see where it all began. They'd stand on the porch where Kade had collapsed with baby Tommy in his arms, where Katherine had opened her door and her heart, and they'd feel the weight of history, of choices made and lives transformed. Because in the end, that's what the story was about. Not just romance, though Katherine and Kade's love was real and deep and lasting. Not just family, though the one they created together was strong and loving. But about the transformative power of compassion, of choosing to help when help is needed, of saying yes to love even when it comes in the most unexpected package. A cowboy pleaded, a curvy girl held a baby by the fire, and from that moment, everything changed. 3 lives were saved that night: Tommy from starvation, Kade from purposeless drifting, and Katherine from drowning in grief. They saved each other, becoming the family each of them desperately needed. And in the great expanse of the American West, in the hard years of the late 1800s, they proved that love and family and home could be built anywhere by anyone, if the will and the heart were strong enough. That was the legacy of Katherine and Kade Kensington, passed down through 5 generations and counting. That love, in all its forms, was the most powerful force in the world. That family was what you made it, not just what you were born into. That the darkest nights could give way to the brightest dawns, if you were brave enough to keep going. Their story became a beacon for others facing loss and hardship. It reminded people that endings could also be beginnings, that tragedy could transform into triumph, that the plea of a desperate cowboy and the compassion of a grieving woman could create ripples that lasted for generations. In the quiet moments, when their descendants gathered for holidays or reunions, someone would always raise a glass and say, "To Katherine and Kade, who started it all." And everyone would echo, "To Katherine and Kade," knowing that they owed their very existence to one cold November night, one desperate plea, one compassionate yes. The fire that Katherine had built that night, the one by which she'd first held baby Tommy and felt her milk let down in a small miracle, became symbolic. Each generation of Kensingtons kept a fire burning in their homes during the winter months, remembering the warmth and light that had been kindled that night, a warmth that had spread to encompass an entire family line. They'd been right, Katherine and Kade, when they told each other that everything happened for a reason. The losses they'd suffered, the pain they'd endured, had all led them to exactly where they needed to be when they needed to be there. And from that convergence of grief and need and compassion, something beautiful had been born, a family, a legacy, a love story for the ages. And it all started with a simple plea from a cowboy and the open heart of a woman by the fire, holding a baby who would become her son in every way that mattered. That was where the Kensington story began in Cherry Creek, Nevada, in 1878, and it continued to echo through the generations. A reminder that love in its truest form was always worth saying yes to, no matter how unexpected the package it arrived in.